Welcome to Exploration and Analysis. This is part of our county series where we explore and analyze different counties. It's a sort of sequel to our last video on San Mateo County. And if you haven't seen that video, you may wish to do so as I'll be referencing it from time to time throughout this video. So usually when I enter California, I start in San Mateo County and then work my way down on Highway 1, and Santa Cruz is usually the second county that I enter. So Santa Cruz County is another very picturesque county with a lot to see, a lot of beauty, but it's also got quite a bit of history and culture, and I'll be talking about all of those things throughout the course of this video. So I'll talk a little bit about the climate. The climate in Santa Cruz is very mild with cool summers and rather warm winters. So it's very nice, very pleasant all year round. So somebody coming from the Northeast where the summers can be very hot and stifling, the winters can be very cold and snowy. I always like to come to this part of California around those times in particular because it's usually a lot nicer there than it is where I'm living. Having said that, though, there's a lot of microclimates within this part of California, so it can be drier in some areas, mistier in some areas, and hotter and cooler, kind of depending on where you are in relation to the ocean and in relation to the mountains. So it's something to bear in mind. The terrain can be very sharp and rugged, so you have a lot of rocky cliffs, a lot of canyons, a lot of very pretty mountains. But it's also got obviously the coast as well, where it's got views of the ocean. So you got a little bit of different stuff to look at as you travel through the different parts of Santa Cruz. One thing I'll warn you about, though, the traffic can be rather intense. When I talked about San Mateo, I talked about the rather leisurely drives along Highway 1, and it can be rather leisurely there. But as you get into Santa Cruz, you do hit quite a bit of traffic, and it's certainly something that California in general is kind of known for, and this part of California is no exception. So here's a map of Santa Cruz County, and what happens is the ocean kind of curves inwards and starts to form Monterey Bay, and that's that kind of curve. So where you see Santa Cruz, the ocean is actually more to the south as opposed to the normal west coast, where the ocean, of course, would be on the west. So there is this kind of curvature in the land right as you enter in the city of Santa Cruz. So that's a big part of its physical geography. On the other side of the bay is Monterey City, and kind of midway through is Watsonville, which I'll be talking about a little bit later in this video. Santa Cruz is also it also has the San Lorenzo River running through it, so it's where the San Lorenzo River meets the Pacific Ocean. So Highway 1, again, I talked a lot about it in my last video. It changes its character as it enters Santa Cruz City. Now, in the beginning, when it's first in Santa Cruz County, it kind of continues on just as it had in San Mateo County, but as it enters Santa Cruz, it starts to change into a more urban kind of road and less as this sort of picturesque kind of ocean view road. So it becomes Mission Street, which is kind of like this uptown street. It's not really like the downtown of Santa Cruz, it's more like the uptown. So there are businesses and different kind of services along the street there, but there's also quite a lot of traffic kind of running around it. And then as it passes Santa Cruz, it actually becomes a proper freeway or a limited access highway as it moves from Santa Cruz down to Watsonville and beyond. So the other major roads that are seen here, you see Route 9 and Route 17, both heading kind of north, one kind of a little bit more northwest, the one a little bit more northeast, and those are heading towards San Jose, but they're going through the Santa Cruz Mountains. So you take either of those roads, you're going to get quite a lot of mountain views as you're heading through the Santa Cruz Mountains and into the area as you get closer to San Jose. So let's talk a little bit about the city of Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz City is a small to medium-sized city of about 60,000 people. And like I said, it's on the northern end of Monterey Bay, right around where the San Lorenzo River flows into the ocean. And it's known for it being having people that are a bit quirky, a little offbeat culture. The movie Lost Boys took place in Santa Cruz. Now, they didn't refer to it as Santa Cruz in the movie, they referred to it as Santa Carla, but it was very much Santa Cruz. And I think they were trying to capture that kind of offbeat, quirky vibe there. In the opening montage of the movie, they play the song People Are Strange by the Doors. And I think that very much encapsulates both the song and the different visuals that they showed as they were playing that song. I think that kind of shows the sort of vibe that kind of Santa Cruz is known for. But beyond that, though, it's also got a very vibrant surfing scene, and it has historically had that. In fact, the movie, or I'm sorry, the song "Surfing USA" by the Beach Boys refers to Santa Cruz because Santa Cruz has always had a vibrant surfing scene. Now, it is rather cold in the ocean around Santa Cruz, but a lot of the surfers wear those kind of bodysuits that keep them kind of warmer than they otherwise would. So the main street, the main kind of drag around Santa Cruz is Pacific Avenue, and there's a lot of bars and restaurants and different kinds of eateries, coffee shops there that you can explore, take advantage of, different kind of shops and things. So there's a pretty vibrant nightlife scene in the downtown Santa Cruz, not only Pacific but Avenue, but some of the neighboring and side streets as well. As far as some of the um, side streets and residential sections of Santa Cruz, they've got a lot of these kind of cute little kind of bungalow style houses that were built in the early to mid 20th century. So they definitely have a nice sort of charm to them. And sometimes they're painted in kind of a wide variety of different kind of colors. So definitely nice looking and pleasant, even if they're not sort of spectacular big or ornate, but just these kind of cute little beachside resort kind of bungalow type houses. So some of the streets that will have these kinds of scenes would be Laurel Street, Front Street, Cedar Street. Those are the kind of side streets that are kind of the residential part of downtown Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is a college town, so it definitely has a lot of youth, a lot of young people, and some of the stuff that goes along with that. And I think that kind of adds to that kind of vibe that I was talking about earlier. But the campus of University of California at Santa Cruz is a very nice looking campus. It's got quite a bit of trees that they built the college around, so it has this sort of sylvan kind of ambiance to it that I think is rather nice and rather pretty. But I think that having a college town of that size and that prominence certainly adds to the culture of Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is also known for its iconic boardwalk. So, and that boardwalk is also portrayed in the movie Lost Boys, where you get a sense of what that like. They have several scenes of the movie that take place in the boardwalk. So it kind of has the feel of a East Coast boardwalk, particularly the ones that were built around the early to mid 20th century, like this one was. And it certainly has a nice aesthetic to it that I think people will appreciate. It kind of as you might picture those old East Coast boardwalk towns like Coney Island or Old Atlantic City, Asbury Park. I think that this is very reminiscent of that. So that's kind of unusual for the West Coast. The West Coast doesn't nearly have as many of those, so it kind of makes Santa Cruz something of a destination point. And it's got one of the oldest roller coasters in the country, which is called the Giant Dipper, and it's mostly made out of wood. And there may be larger and faster roller coasters out there, but I think this has its own kind of scariness because when you hear that wood make that clickety clank sound as it goes along the tracks, I don't know. There's something a little off-putting about that as you're kind of experiencing that. And the other thing too, I like as you're going along that roller coaster, when you get to those higher elevations on it, you definitely get some beautiful views looking around the ocean and the Santa Cruz and the area around it. So it's definitely has some nice looking things that you can see from the roller coaster itself before you plunge into your scary descent down into the lower areas. But I'm not much of a roller coaster guy myself. I probably prefer Ferris wheels. And I remember going on a Ferris wheel when that song Kokomo came out by the Beach Boys. And I tell you can't get much better of a California vibe than hearing Kokomo blasting on the speakers and going up in a Ferris wheel and seeing those views around Santa Cruz, around that boardwalk. So it's definitely was an experience that was kind of cemented into my mind and something that I definitely remember. So you see some of the pictures here of the boardwalk. You can kind of get there from the beach, like some of these pictures are, or you could get there from the streets, as the middle picture is. One of the things I like to do when I travel is to use something called meetup.com. And Meetup is usually a way for people to get together locally and to sort of expand their network and people that they know locally. But I also think it's a good tool for travelers to meet new people that are from the places you travel to, because I think it's a good idea when you travel not to just explore the touristy attractions, but also to meet people. So these meetups are often centered around, going to the bar, going to a restaurant, or maybe going to movies. So I've done all of these different kinds of meetups in my various trips to Santa Cruz, and I've met a lot of different interesting people, whether it be for a couple of beers, or in one case there was a dinner and a movie meetup where we went to like this independent theater that they had in Santa Cruz that just showed like independent movies, just a one theater cinema. And it was kind of a cool experience. And like I said, I enjoyed interacting with the different folks I met there. And I think that despite maybe Santa Cruz's reputation of being so offbeat and quirky, I think you find when you do these meetups, you find that people are much more normal, at the end of the day, and not really all that crazy. Maybe one exception though, and I think the exception is kind of worth a good story. I remember at one of these meetups at a bar, I went with several people at this meetup. There were probably like six guys and two women, and one of the women was talking about this movie that she had seen recently that she really enjoyed. And I got to tell you, it was the quintessential chick flick what she was describing. And I'm sure all the guys there were thinking the same thing as me, but I was the only one who said anything, and I made a sort of joke that I thought, in my northeasterner kind of way, was kind of, it might be endearing, that she might appreciate me teasing her a little bit. So I said something along the lines of, "God, that sounds like the absolute worst movie ever." And rather than getting laughs, she really did not take that well, and she started throwing a lot of insults at me, and really was offended by my attempt at humor. So it just goes to show you, maybe not everywhere and everybody kind of has the same level of sense of humor. But after she kind of like went somewhere else, some of the guys kind of gave me a pat in the back and just said, "Hey, buddy, don't get too offended by her reaction. It's okay. She's just the way she is." And yeah, I figure maybe she doesn't represent all of Santa Cruz, but it's kind of a good story to tell, a good kind of meetup story. But I think these meetups are really good experiences in order to, get a little bit of a sense of some of the different locals as you're traveling in different communities. So another cool thing to see, and this gets back to more of like the pure tourist attraction, is this mystery spot. And the mystery spot is this place where you go where it's like the laws of physics and the laws of optics are sort of out of whack and things are just not like the way they're supposed to be. So you see balls like rolling up hills, and you see people standing upright, but they're actually standing on a slant. So they basically give you a guided tour and they show you all these things where things just don't like look and the way that they're supposed to. And the implication is that there's some sort of paranormal or some sort of you know science, or the science can't quite explain why this is going on in this spot. I don't know. I went there the most recent time I went there was when I was 16, and I've always been a sort of skeptical, not particularly gullible 16-year-old. But I tell you, I couldn't figure out if there was any kind of trick that they were playing. It wasn't easy to figure out what it was. And my grandfather was with me for that trip, and I tell you, he was blown away. He thought it was like very spectacular indeed. indeed. Now, there probably was some sort of well-staged optical illusions that they do, but it really, it really is a fun thing, and it really isn't like however they manage to do these different things, it isn't obvious. So the mystery spot is, a fairly well-known tourist attraction, and you can go and see it in Santa Cruz. It's kind of tucked into the mountains a little bit, so it's in the redwoods. So it's kind of a cool little place in any case, and a chance to see kind of an old timey kind of roadside attraction like this. So I'll give some shout outs to some local businesses. Again, these are not any paid sponsors or anything like that, but I do like to tip my cap if I think that the local businesses have done a good job at providing something when I travel. And last time I stayed in Santa Cruz City, I stayed at a motel called the Drift Inn, and it was fairly affordable. I think it was like 89 bucks, and it was a short walk to the boardwalk. And this picture was taken from the motel. Is it from my room or from the porch? But anyway, you could see the boardwalk there in the distance. You can see actually the Giant Dipper, kind of darting up there. So the motel was very close to the boardwalk. It was also close to downtown. It was close to the beach. So I was within a fairly short walk from all those things. A short walk to the riverfront as well, and it was 89 bucks. And you not only got the room there, but there was also a kitchen behind the room, and there was a porch both in the front and the back. So I thought you got a pretty good deal there for the price. I also, had some good places to eat, and I talked in my San Mateo County video about how much I like the California Mexican food, and Taqueria Vallarta was the most recent one I went to in Santa Cruz City, and they had a very good selection of food and very well priced, and they give you good portions, so you get good bang for your buck. And they have what I like about these taco areas in California, these salsa bars and condiment bars where you can get like different kinds of salsa, different kinds of toppings, different kinds of condiments. You can just help yourself to them free of charge, going along with your meal. And so I always like going to California where they have these like kind of robust sort of taco bars, and that was Taqueria Vallarta was one that had that. Then in Santa Cruz County, outside of the city, of course, more in the mountains, is a village called Boulder Creek, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But they had a very good taco area as well in Boulder Creek. It was called Taqueria Los Gallos. So those are two that I happened to go to at my most recent trip to California. But I tell you, in all my trips to California over the years, I have been to many, many good taco areas. So these are just a couple of them. And so I thought it was worth mentioning these and kind of giving a shout out. So yes, Boulder Creek is outside of the city of Santa Cruz. It's more in the Santa Cruz Mountains as you get towards the outskirts of the county, and it's a very nice little village to go to. Indeed, it was an old lumbering town, so it definitely has a different vibe. It does have that kind of western kind of frontier town kind of look to it that I think that is rather charming and something you don't really see a lot of in the East Coast. So Boulder Creek, I think, is a nice town, and like I said, it has surprisingly good food. It was a very good taqueria there that I enjoyed very much indeed, and I felt like it provided some good value there. And so there's a lot of these nice little like kind of small, mountain towns in the Santa Cruz Mountains that I think are kind of charming and kind of worth looking at as well. So in the Santa Cruz Mountains, you'll come across Henry Cowell State Park, which is a very nice place to hike. It's got different kinds of terrain, different kinds of trees on there. So it has redwoods, and the redwoods are always spectacular. And when you're hiking in the redwood forest, it's like something very magical, something very serene as you see these huge red trees kind of towering over you. So Henry Cowell State Park has its share of redwoods, but it also has like just other kinds of forest area as well. And I found that it was a very good place to hike, and a place I'd like to explore. Unfortunately, I don't have as many pictures of it as I did some of the San Mateo hikes that I went on. But I think next time I'm there in Santa Cruz, I'm going to take more photos of this because Henry Cowell State Park was a very nice place to hike indeed. I'll talk a little bit about Capitola, which is also another coastal town near Santa Cruz City in Santa Cruz County. It's probably about maybe 5 miles or so from Santa Cruz City, and it's like a smaller version of a kind of beachside town, and it started out as kind of a resort town in the 1800s, and it's very picturesque. Probably it's grown more than it ought to have, but I think if you visit it now, you'll see there's a bit of hustle bustle, a bit of traffic, a bit of more crowds than maybe you'd like, but it still has that kind of small town charm that I think is maybe worth the inconveniences that come with all the traffic and all the hustle and bustle. There's a reason why people like it so much, and it is a kind of a cute, seaside town as well. Now, Watsonville is another city in California, and I'm sorry, in Santa Cruz County, California, which is almost as big as Santa Cruz City. It's a little over 50,000 people, so it's a small to medium sized city, and it's a very different. It's very much a contrast from Santa Cruz City. Watsonville is not really a tourist town at all. But I think that's okay because I think after kind of experiencing Santa Cruz and maybe Capitola and the hustle and bustle that those communities tend to have. I think Watsonville it contrasts with that by being a little bit more down to earth and a little bit more of a sort of everyday life kind of community. And it's certainly it was built around agribusiness to a large extent. Driscoll's is a major company that distributes fruit, and you may see stuff in your produce section packaged by Driscoll's, and that company is based in Watsonville. So there's a lot of companies like that, a lot of big agribusiness companies based in Watsonville. And it's as you start to get into this more southern part of Santa Cruz County, you start to see more and more farmland. And as you get into the northern part of Monterey County, there's a lot of farmland in Monterey County indeed. And so you start to see a little bit of a different vibe. It starts to be a little bit flatter, a little bit of a demographic change as well. So much larger Hispanic populations in the southern part of Santa Cruz County, the northern part of Monterey County. I think. Watsonville has more than an 80% Hispanic population, and the bulk of those would be people of Mexican origin. So a lot of that kind of cultural influence there. And I think if you go to a lot of the shops in Watsonville, it's going to be very much influenced by Mexican culture. You'll see Mexican grocery stores, Mexican produce shops and stuff. So a lot of folks speaking Spanish there. So you're going to see a different, more like the agricultural, agribusiness kind of vibe as you get into to Watsonville. But I think I think that as you're traveling through, some of these different communities, it's nice to get a mix, and it's nice to get a change of pace. And Watsonville, I definitely think is a change of pace from Santa Cruz. And I think I end up spending, quite a bit of time there, even if there isn't like it isn't known for its tourist attractions. I think that it's a nice sort of more blue collar and more kind of down to earth community that I appreciate, visiting when I'm there. So to wrap up here, as we take a look at this picture of this coyote that I came across in Santa Cruz County, not too far from Watsonville. Yeah, Santa Cruz, I think, is a very nice county to explore. And if you happen to get a chance, I think it'll be worth your while. And even though you have to deal with a bit of traffic, I think that there's so much nice stuff to see as far as the nature and some of the scenery, but also some of the culture and historic stuff as well. So certainly worth your time. And whenever I'm in California, I find myself wanting to spend as much time as I can in Santa Cruz County.